Hey guys, it's Destiny, and today we're going to be doing tier list review where I just go over the recent tier list changes and I just share my thoughts on them. Plus, I'd love to know what you guys think about the changes as well, if you agree, disagree, and why. Before we get into today's video, let me know your favorite character from Penacony. For me personally, it would be Black Swan. And if you guys enjoy videos like these, do make sure to subscribe, leave a like to support the video, and now let's get straight into it. So the Pride 1 tier list has been updated, and I thought today we can take a look at the changes, which if I'm not mistaken, yeah, there are quite a lot of changes. Also the addition of Rappa, which I'll be going over if I think these changes should have happened or not really. But starting off, we're going to start with the one that caught my attention the most, which is Acheron. They dropped Acheron from tier 0 to 0.5, where she was before with Feixiao, but now she is with Dr. Ratio and Yunli. So personally, right off the bat, I think they just could have kept her at tier 0 alongside Feixiao. And I do realize that this says that it is an E0 S0 Acheron. Something I thought I'd note regarding that, because if I'm not mistaken in their changelog, they do mention how like they feel like even with Jiaoqiu, it wasn't enough. And I personally do disagree with that. Jiaoqiu, in my opinion, is able to provide a lot of comfortability to Acheron when it comes to those that do have her E0 S0, which I have actually tested this on my channel as well. Feixiao is able to provide a lot of quality of life when it comes to playing Acheron because he's going to be able to provide those Ash and Rose stacks at a very consistent basis onto enemies. And now when it's the enemy's turn and they're getting inflicted with those Ash and Rose stacks, this will help provide Acheron stacks for her ultimate. So considering that, even at E0 S0, like if you're using Goodnight Sleep Well, Goodnight Sleep Well is still able to dish out a lot of damage when it comes to this character, especially if once again you do have Jiaoqiu on the team. I have in the past showed her off with an E0 S0 build with Pela, and even that still felt good in my personal opinion. And also considering her kit, when she does use her ultimate, she is able to reduce the toughness meter no matter what the element of the enemy is. And she's also able to reduce the ult type resistance of an enemy as well, which helps out in the case of just being able to deal more damage to them if they aren't already weak to lightning. This will additionally help out just for her damage output. So overall, I feel like Acheron has a lot in her kit that does make her a very powerful character. The more Nihility characters we get in the future, depending on what they do, they can be paired alongside her, which means she could end up getting a super nice partner in the future that can honestly further her potential. Jiaoqiu was definitely a release that helped out in the case of the quality of life aspect once again, as I mentioned, the Ash and Rose. Plus his debuffs, of course, are really nice for amplifying her damage output, and considering the fact I'm pretty sure these tier lists are based off like if they are on the best team possible for them or just using some of their best partners. And even if they are E0 S0, I still feel like this pairing is really powerful, which is why I would honestly say I still feel like she can be in tier 0 alongside Feixiao. Feixiao is definitely a powerhouse. I will admit that I've been having a lot of fun with her myself. I think she's 100% worthy of tier 0. But my question becomes, do you guys feel like Acheron is below Feixiao? And do you feel like Acheron is on the same caliber as Dr. Ratio and Yunli? I do personally feel like Acheron is 100% worthy of the tier 0 alongside Feixiao. Both of them are just incredibly powerful characters and they provide a lot of value on accounts still, with just how much damage they can output. Especially once again, even at E0 S0, I still feel like Acheron is a very strong damage dealer. If you do disagree with that, let me know. And I guess another question I have for you guys is, since Feixiao is in tier 0 and Dr. Ratio is right below her at 0.5, do you guys feel like Dr. Ratio is only a 0.5 difference from Feixiao? I actually did recently ask a couple people this because I was really curious. Most of them did not agree with it only being a 0.5 increment of a difference between their power, but I'd love to know what you guys think. And this is keeping in mind that the whole team is also E0 S0. So mainly free to play / 4-star light cones will be used if there's no signatures involved. So I would love to know if you guys feel like Feixiao and Ratio are that close to each other in power. And as for Yunli, I think Yunli can be 0.5, especially when it comes to the counterplay style. So I think 0.5 for Yunli is perfectly fine. As for scrolling down, I still am going to bring up the same point as I did last tier list review. Do you guys feel like Yunli and Clara should have a 0.5 increment between them? Similar, I guess, to how I just asked if Feixiao and Dr. Ratio should. Now, the 0.5 and tier 2 is where I got really confused with this change. They dropped Jingliu, but they upped Blade, which I'm very confused why. I don't see why, I guess, Jingliu dropped, but then Blade went up and now they're on the same tier. I personally don't really agree with them being on the same tier. I do feel like Jingliu could have stayed in tier 1. In my opinion, I do feel like Blade needs another character. Like, I've noticed a lot of people mention like maybe an HP manipulation character to just help out with synergizing with his kit. I think that would be amazing for Blade. So I'm really curious in the future if there like a new support will come out that just really helps out Blade in particular. But I do feel like most of the other supports that have released have been more catered towards, you know, follow-up teams, or we've gotten a lot of supports like HMC and Rame who are really, really nice when it comes to break teams, for example. Then of course we still have our hyper carry characters, but none of them have anything when it comes to, I guess, just full on synergizing with Blade's kit when it comes to that HP manipulation, for example. I noticed they also dropped Zila. I still think they could have probably just kept Zila where she was, 1.5. And somebody I actually think maybe they should increase is Himeko. I will say Himeko, in my opinion, has been getting better over time. I've actually recently did 2 Himeko showcases, one with a crit build, one with a super break build. And I feel like Himeko has been getting better. The new Exo Toughness MOC is really interesting for her because it can allow her to deal so many follow-ups. And it's pretty crazy just how much damage output she can dish out just by how frequently she can unleash these follow-ups. So I can see Himeko potentially getting even better in the future. There's definitely potential for her in particular. So I'd love to see just what ends up happening in the future regarding Himeko in particular. Could see Misha one day honestly going up. I'm not too sure if I would say Serval and Misha should be the same tier, but I have just seen some pretty crazy Misha showcases in the past. So maybe Misha could be a little higher. I'd love to know what you guys think about that as well. And now if we move on actually to the specialist character category. Firefly is still tier 0, 0.5 is Boothill and Topaz. Honestly, I feel like there could be an argument made for Boothill in tier 0. I said this, I believe, in the last tier list as well, but Boothill is definitely a powerhouse when it comes to just nuking bosses. I think honestly in MOC though, he still has really good performance. On Hule, if I'm not mistaken, he can get a 0 to a 1 cycle range. So he is honestly really powerful. It ultimately comes down to what your team is, but Boothill also doesn't need his signature light cone to still be a powerhouse. As for Topaz, she has gone up with time just because of how strong the follow-up teams have become. Topaz is a great option, especially when it comes to just being paired up with Feixiao, for example. So I think Topaz can definitely be up here. She's just a great option for follow-up teams. Then if we scroll down a little bit, we have March, Mosa, and then Rappa. With March and Mosa, I think this placement's fine. They are both amazing characters. I have seen some actually argue for March potentially being in 0.5 though. She is able to be used on break teams, but she also can be used on crit teams and just follow-up teams in general she also works on. So I think March is honestly an incredible 4-star option to consider. I always recommend building her now because she's just such a great option. Even without any signature light cones, you could, for example, use like Cruising the Cellar C on her, and that works perfectly fine. As for Mosa, he's really, really nice on follow-up teams. I have tried him and Feixiao out before. Really fun to play and just also really powerful. As for Rappa, now this is where it gets a little interesting. They put Rappa in tier 1 to begin, which I think she could have either started off in tier 1 or 0.5. I wouldn't say tier 0 because we haven't seen enough of her, in my personal opinion, to justify an immediate tier 0. In Rappa's case, she is very powerful with just her enhanced basic attacks. If you do, of course, have Harmony and Chill Blizzard on the team, there's going to be so much super break damage happening. She's definitely a powerhouse when it comes to once the enemy is broken. She's going to be able to dish out a bunch of damage onto them. And I was able to get a 2 cycle on Hule. I believe it was actually really close or somewhat close to potentially getting a 1 cycle on him. I will say though, in the case of Rappa, getting the enemy broken, similarly I guess to other break characters or break centric characters, is definitely going to be your priority. Now the one thing Rappa does not have, which I notice a lot do mention, is that she does not have Imaginary Implant. which me personally, I do wish that she did have it. Instead, what she has, she can reduce the toughness reduction of enemies with her enhanced basic attacks, which is still pretty nice. But the reason why an imaginary implant would be so freaking useful is if you are using Harmony Trailblazer alongside her, say that Rappa did have imaginary implant. Now what this allows is Rappa and Harmony Trailblazer can work towards breaking whatever enemy you're fighting. And because of Harmony Trailblazer's skill being able to bounce so many times, that can heavily assist with quickly breaking enemies if she did have an imaginary implant. So that's the reason I really wish she had it. I do think though her being able to reduce toughness meters with her enhanced basic attacks is still really good, don't get me wrong. I have seen some experiment with Silverwolf on the team where Silverwolf will implant the imaginary weakness onto an enemy, which also can help for sure, so there's that. But then you do have to possibly take out your Ruan Mei off the team instead if you do want to keep a sustain on the team. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And as for the Hule fight in particular, because he is weak to fire, you can use Gallagher or Lingsha to heavily assist with breaking Hule. With Lingsha, you'll be able to use her ultimate and then of course her follow-ups, which are really handy for just breaking enemies in general. And then you have Gallagher where he can do his ultimate and then he can do an enhanced basic attack right afterwards. So these two can heavily assist with the Hule fight. But then the question is, what happens if an enemy is not imaginary weak or fire weak? And I feel like that's where there might be a big problem in my opinion, because in the current MOC, the first side is weak, if I'm not mistaken, to fire and imaginary. The second side, which is Hule, is weak to fire. So once again, Gallagher or Lingsha can help, but what happens, I guess, if there was an enemy that wasn't weak to either? How does Rappa go against that? Would you be forced to bring Silverwolf? Or would you just have to try your best to break that enemy so then Rappa can start dealing a bunch of super break damage? So that's a question I also have for you guys is, what is the solution, I guess, to a situation like that where if they don't share that weakness? That's just, I guess, currently my thoughts on Rappa. I do wish she had the imaginary implant instead of the reducing toughness meters with her enhanced basic attacks because of the reasons I listed, especially for the Harmony Trailblazer reason, just for both of them being able to work towards breaking enemies. And as for her placement, once again, I think tier 1 is fine. She could have been in 0.5 potentially, but I do feel like with Rappa, we will have to wait a bit longer to truly be able to gauge her full potential. I do think she's a very powerful break-oriented character. Her damage is definitely up there. I don't think anyone can deny that factor for sure. I did test her in every single mode in one of my recent videos, and she was able to kick the enemy's butt regardless of what the mode was. So I was pretty impressed with Rappa's performance because of that. But we'll have to wait and see for future Memory of Chaoses and just future Pure Fiction, future Apocalyptic Shadow, whatever it may be. We'll have to wait and see just how she performs. And of course, the more break-oriented characters we can get, this could actually further amplify her potential. So that's another thing to keep in mind whenever we get our next break-oriented character. I'm definitely going to be trying them out with Rappa just to see how much they can further her potential. But yeah, I think this placement, once again, it's fine for right now. We'll just have to wait and see with her. Would love to know what you guys think about Rappa, if she should be in tier 1 or if she should be a bit higher. Now, they did drop Black Swan and Kafka, and I will say when it comes to Dot in particular, it does feel like currently Dot needs another character just to further amplify them, I would say. It does feel like in comparison, let's say we compare Dot to, let's say the Feixiao team, like a follow-up team, or even if we compared it to even break teams right now, it does feel like Dot is a little lacking in my personal opinion. I will agree with that. Now, of course, I still think they should be in this meta character category 100%. They probably could have stayed where they were, honestly, but I can see why a potential drop can happen. And I do think whenever we get our next Dot-oriented character, just a character that's really good for damage over time teams, I do think these two will likely go up again. And damage over time will be, once again, a pretty powerful playstyle. Not to say it's not a powerful playstyle currently, it's still able to do pretty well. It's just, I guess if you were to compare the playstyle currently to, once again, break teams or the follow-up team, it does feel like that those two archetypes have been getting way more love recently in comparison. So I can understand, I guess, people's concerns currently with Dot, because I would personally love another Dot character. Black Swan is one of my favorite characters. Kafka is also a really fun character to play. So I can't wait until we get our next damage over time centric character just to see how they can synergize with these two and potentially further amplify the play style. Now, as for our amplifier characters, Robin and Ruame say in tier 0, completely agree with this. Xiaoshu and Harmony Trailblazer in 0.5, I can also agree with this. But I did notice that they dropped down Sparkle. I do honestly think they could have just kept Sparkle in 0.5. I think her placement there was fine, honestly, because of the fact that she does provide a lot of skill point comfortability. And why the skill point comfortability matters is that, for example, let's say you're using Sparkle and Ting Yun together, you actually now can use Ting Yun's skill a bit more often, which now will allow you to use her ultimate more often. And if you have Dance 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 equipped, now you can heavily take advantage of that. So Sparkle definitely has a lot of benefits when it comes to just being able to be more flexible with your skill points and heavily take advantage of that for more ultimate usage, since you will be able to spam your skills more often. Another thing to keep in mind is that we did get a new relic set that we can use on her, which can further amplify the amount of crit damage that she gives an ally. She already will give an ally a good amount of crit damage, and now on top of this, with the relic set, now it'll be even more. So in Sparkle's case, she makes building your characters that are crit based a bit more easier, since she'll give so much crit damage to them. So now you can focus more so on the crit rate. As well. Plus she still also has the advance forward in her kit, which is super handy. So in Sparkle's case, once again, I think she could have stayed in 0.5. She has a lot of quality of life features that you can think about in her kit, just because of what she's able to provide. So that's just my personal opinion on that. As for Bronya and Pela going up, I think Pela going up is fine in my opinion. Pela is really useful for a 4-star character. She's able to provide AoE defense reduction onto enemies, which is super useful in the case of just being able to deal more damage onto enemies, regardless of honestly what the team comp is. As for Bronya, I do think Bronya is a really nice standard character. She's still able to provide pretty valuable buffs, and then she's also able to provide that 100% advance forward, which is still really useful for being able to mess around with. Let's say Bronya is 1 speed lower than your DPS character. Now she'll be able to advance them forward by 100%, which means you'll be able to attack more frequently with that character. And now this results in you also getting your ultimate more frequently with that character as well. I honestly really like the Bronya and Boothill pairing. It's just so much fun to see. I do think Bronya has still quite a lot of value for what it's worth. And when it comes to Ting Yun, she's an amazing option for being able to provide buffs to your main damage dealer and also being able to give them energy, which is really good in the case of, let's say you play Yun Li. She'll be able to give a bunch of energy to Yun Li. And you can also actually use Ting Yun's ultimate on Robin. Robin and Ting Yun is such a fun pairing together. You can use DDD on Ting Yun, and also use Ting Yun's ultimate on Robin, which now allows Robin to be able to use her ultimate sooner into the fight, and now you'll be able to take advantage of all those buffs. So I personally am a huge fan of Ting Yun. I feel like she allows for quite a lot of flexibility when it comes to just teams in general and what you can do with that extra energy. And she is also able to recover skill points for the team, as she is able to basic attack very frequently. So that's also pretty handy. And lastly, we have sustains. So we have Aventurine, Huohua in tier 0. Now in 0.5, we have Fushun, Gallagher, and Lingsha. Now me personally, I do think Lingsha could honestly be in tier 0. I have been using her extensively since she has released, and Lingsha is able to provide very nice healing for the team. She's able to unleash follow-ups, which also allows you to cleanse the team as well as more healing. She can work on follow-up teams if you don't have Aventurine. She of course works on break teams, and she can technically also work as just a general healer. Plus her personal damage output, especially on a break team, is pretty insane for what it's worth. So I personally think Lingsha could be in tier 0. As for the meta character category, we have Luocha, Lynx, and then Japard. I think these 3 being where they are is fine in my opinion. And if we scroll down, so honestly, I think these placements are fine. I did make an argument last time for potentially having Bailu alongside Japard. I don't personally see why not. Bailu does have a revive in her kit, which, let's say you're fighting an enemy that just deals a bunch of damage, or let's say in the case if you're fighting Hule and Hule attacks the same ally back to back, Bailu can be pretty handy just for being able to provide that revive. I think honestly she could just be alongside Japard. I don't see why not. I would love to know what you guys think about that. If Bailu should be alongside Japard or if she's fine where she is. Overall, the tier list had some pretty questionable changes in my opinion. The Acheron one especially, I don't agree with this. The Sparkle drop, I also don't agree. The Jingliu drop, it's a lot of the drops that I just don't agree with. I feel like those characters could have just stayed where they were. And yeah, I'd love to know though, overall, I know I've asked this quite a lot throughout the video, but would love to know all of you guys' thoughts. What do you guys think about the tier list right now? Do you agree with it? Or do you heavily disagree with some of these changes? Because I know for a fact I definitely do. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, though I know it was more than likely probably a lengthy one. I yapped a little too much today. But if you guys did enjoy this video, do make sure to subscribe, leave a like to support the video, and let me know if there's any characters you'd like me to experiment with in Apocalyptic Shadow, Memory of Chaos, or Pure Fiction. I'd love to just show off fun teams. I'd love to know what you guys want to see. But yeah, I hope you all have a great one like always. Peace.